Homes with 2 or more dogs, they can be civilized until somebody gets a treat or a hug, and then it's a brawl, right? So much acrimony. It's like having a political campaign in your living room. Let's get control of this peacefully. Does this ever happen at your house? Do you have competing dogs, dogs who often get along but then mix it up and, maybe risk having a fight, or they do fight? Put your name in there. Send me a comment. Tell me about it. Let's address it while we're here. And by the way, if you know somebody who struggles with this dilemma, put their name in the comment line too, so they can get this Facebook Live and maybe save themselves and their pets some injury. In case we haven't met, I'm veterinarian Dr. Jeff Nickel, along with our family border collie, Miss America here, and our cats, Tony and Gaston. And this is not about cats, but, well, they hang out here. They live here. This is my house. So I'm residency trained in veterinary behavior medicine with many years also in general practice. I've been at this so long there's hardly anything I haven't seen. And so I'd love to know that you're here. And so please tell me, put a comment and tell me where you're from. And if you can hear me loud and clear, hit the wow button just so that I know that the microphone's working and the whole thing is getting into your home. And if you find this information helpful, please send me some hearts. I like to know that we're doing something valuable here. So I'd like to drive this message home for the start with reading you a story. Really, this is a question that was sent to me on my Facebook page. And Carolyn's going to give me my iPad in a minute so I don't have to squint at the camera.
Yeah, Diane is saying hi.
Oh, Diane. Oh, thank you so much. Oh, and Cindy's here too. Wonderful. Thanks for coming, you guys. Yeah, wonderful. Okay. So, let me get this darn thing set up. I'm going to turn it around like this to make it there. A little more user-friendly. Oops, it went away. Oh, I don't know if it'll... shucks. Carolyn, I turned it around and now it's not working. I tried to set it up on that little stand there. Okay, thank you. So anyway, here's a question, and I ended up putting this in my weekly column in the Albuquerque Journal as well. So you may have heard this, but it really allows me to make some very clear points on this, because these kinds of problems of dogs mixing it up and their people inadvertently setting them up to fail, trying to set them up for success, but the opposite happens. So here's the question. How do you help with competition between dogs for human attention? Rosebud acts like she owns me, and Helmet, the new dog in the family, acts like he owns my husband. How to reduce this behavior? Well, we need to not just reduce it, we need to eliminate it. And the reason is that every time dogs rehearse a ramp up in arousal, they are actually strengthening the synapses between neurons in their brain. The neural circuits are getting thicker. There's more excitatory and inhibitory inputs to sharpen and speed the response. Thank you, Carolyn. And so you need to set your dogs up to abandon behaviors that are unhealthy. Simply reducing them continues to allow them to worsen. So here was my answer. Rosebud and Helmet believe their access to their leaders is limited. What? Why, that's ridiculous. That was my Daffy Duck impression, in case you didn't catch on to that. Love and affection for your dogs is boundless. I mean, if you're taking the time to watch this Facebook Live, you really feel strongly about your pets, and how could they possibly suspect that there's a limit to how much love and affection you have to share, not to mention food? Well, I'll tell you why in just a minute. Love and affection for our dogs is boundless from the human perspective, but dogs think differently. Their species has scraped by for thousands of years believing that resources like food and interaction with leaders are scarce. Rosebud and Helmet are genetically programmed to assume that their sustenance and their people could evaporate any time. That's a biggest reason why dogs who are leaders of a free-living social group, and this goes way back tens of thousands of years in the development of their successful survival in a harsh climate anywhere on the globe, is that they believe that every resource, food, interaction with leaders, signals, cues, directions from leaders that make it possible for them to pull with the group and help everybody to survive and pass on their genetic code, those things are limited. And so consequently, a dog really needs to earn interactions with its leader and earn food resources too, because they really do believe they could dry up anytime. And there's no way that we're going to foist our human concepts of interactions and love and sharing like kindergarteners on our dogs successfully, because they're wired differently than people in that respect. So each of your dogs has picked their person. Rosebud cannot allow Helmet near your highness, because if she doesn't get all of you, she's sure that she won't get any of you. There is no way to change her hard wiring, but you and your husband are smarter than your dogs. Really. And you can learn canine leadership. And I'll tell you what, dogs who get consistent canine-specific leadership from their people are more secure, less anxious, because when they see what we're doing, they recognize immediately, because it's genetically hardwired into their brains, that, oh, I can earn what I need to survive. Wow, they get it. It's all hardwired in there anyway. So we have to get outside ourselves, and I harp on empathy probably every week, don't I? We understand that with other people, right? Others are different than I am, and they might be facing challenges that I don't have, and they might behave badly, but there may be some very important reasons for that. And if I walk a mile in their shoes, then maybe I'm going to be able to be a little nicer and help set them up for success instead of losing my patience with them. So consequently, what I want to do is do the same thing with dogs, and cats too, for that matter. They are our great companions, but that doesn't mean that they're just like us. They're not little people in furry suits. They're members of a different species. So let's leave a leash attached to each dog's collar whenever they're inside. If they compete for either person's attention, or they get pushy with each other, both of them must be immediately ignored. Now, you've heard me talk about ignoring before. This is very powerful because, again, dogs are sure that any response they get from their person, or really any person, has been earned by their behavior and their emotional state of that moment, because that's how they function. They don't believe they have an entitlement to any response from a person. So, at scarcity, you think, how's that possible? They're different, okay? They're different species. So they get something, any response, including a reprimand, and they believe they've earned it. And they will repeat behaviors that have earned them a reinforcer. What gets rewarded gets repeated. Okay? So if you want behaviors to stop, the first thing you've got to do, or as Will Rogers said, when you find yourself in a hole, the first thing to do is stop digging, right? So if your dogs are mixing it up and you say, don't want that behavior, immediately ignore it. Okay? Really? Yeah, really. I mean, if you've been intervening hundreds of times and your dogs are still mixing it up, obviously it's not working, right? So let's do something that makes sense for that species and withhold interaction. Okay? So, but if you've left a leash attached to each dog's collar when you're with them, and they're indoors, then you can immediately ignore, and then you can grab the leashes and take off in a different direction. Lead that leash with the fully ignored dog on the other end to another room and close the door, or outside. So that now these fully ignored dogs have lost their interaction with their leader temporarily, and that is a pretty significant consequence for a dog, and they don't see the other dog. And you've stopped a problem safely by using leashes. You reach in with your hands and you can get severely injured. Doesn't mean your dogs intend to injure you, but they can sure as heck do it unintentionally by what we call redirected aggression. Okay? So, pick up either leash and lead that fully ignored dog outside or to another room and close the door. You can then return to the other dog and lavishly enjoy his or her attention and have a wonderful time. Okay? And then you say, hey, wait a minute. That's not fair, is it? Forget about it. Rosebud and Helmet live in the moment. If one dog doesn't see his competitor getting a brand new car and a dream vacation, there will be no recrimination. They don't get jealous. That's a human shortcoming. Rosebud and Helmet are not little people in furry suits. They're dogs. Avoid corrections or reprimands or sharing your affection or snacks with each dog equally. A canine hierarchy doesn't recognize the human concept of equality. Honestly, they don't have it. Rosebud and Helmet believe that a response from their exalted rulers is never gratis, but must always be earned. Whatever your reaction, they will think that their behavior of the moment has been reinforced. Ignore what you don't want and set your dogs up to succeed, putting one of them elsewhere before you share snacks and a hug or any of the triggers that you've learned from experience are likely to set a problem into motion. And then love the dog you're with. All right then. So.
We've got some people that have checked in. And
Oh, okay. Oh, wonderful. Okay, let me see who they are. Here we go. Carla, wonderful. Thank you for coming. I'm delighted. We just adopted a new puppy. How's Afro feel about that? Aphrodite, the great English bulldog. Yeah, Aphrodite is being okay so far. Well, she's a bulldog, and you know, most of them are pretty sweet, and Aphrodite is a delightful dog, so I'm not surprised. But you're fortunate because that doesn't always go well. But now that you have two dogs, Carla, feed them at the same time but in separate rooms, okay? Even if they are the best of pals and you never see any trouble, don't gamble on that one. Turns out that aggression between family dogs is the most common behavior problem we see in a veterinary behavior specialty practice like mine. A lot of research on it, a great deal of experience, and people, of course, their first question when they come in with these things is, what can I do when this happens? Oh, it's an understandable question, but it's the wrong question. The right question is avoidance, prevention. Don't set them up for failure, okay? So let me go through a few more things on this thing to help educate people. Is there anybody else here?
yeah, we've got a few.
Oh, okay, let's see. Well, I said hello to Cindy and Diane. Anybody else?
There's maybe somebody just came on.
Oh, all right. Well, it'll come up in a minute. Okay. So, yeah, forget jealousy. People say that all the time. Because, you know, again, that's what it looks like from a human perspective. But dogs aren't into that ego stuff. They have a hierarchy. And if you're going to be a successful leader of the canine social group in your home, even if there are just two of them, you and other human members of your family are also regarded by your dogs as members of the hierarchy, and it's quite rare for a dog to not recognize all humans as leaders, because that's fundamental to the species. That's the reason that they were split off from wolves 30 or 40,000 years ago, because the dogs who would lose their fear and come to people and earn food were the ones that the people took in and bred. And in the space of just 3 or 4 generations, they developed this new species that works for us. Okay? So don't believe this foolishness about dogs trying to dominate or outrank their people. It's exceptionally rare. Okay? Your dogs have a hierarchy among themselves, and they need their leader, their person, just as their canine leader would in a free-living feral group of dogs, to support the hierarchy. And that hurts a lot of people's heart. They go, wait a minute, I love my dogs equally. I want them all to have an equal share of my love. I get it. I'm that way with my pets. Well, what you do, though, is this is cumbersome and it can be a pain in the neck, but if your dogs are prone to mix it up with particular triggers like food and attention, you always put one elsewhere out of sight before you engage in those things. Okay, somebody else showed up. Who is it? And it is, Diane. Okay, she has, darn thing isn't lighting up very well, Carolyn. I don't know why. Oh, there it is. Had an adopter that had one hound turn on the other and fight once and not since. cause lots of damage. Oh my goodness. When I did emergency work, I can't tell you how many times I sutured up these wounds. And they get worse. And dogs, of course, when they bite each other, their teeth are not sharp like blades. They don't make lacerations. They cause crushing injuries. And they tear the skin too. But oftentimes, these wounds are worse 3 to 5 days later because of damage, sometimes permanent damage to blood supply. Boy, dog fights are to be avoided. And you can say, well, my dogs mix it up and they never hurt each other. They're probably just below threshold. They repeat this often enough and somebody really does get injured. So you have to take action on these things. And by supporting the hierarchy, by being the good canine leader, then very often people find that if they give attention to the high-ranking dog when they're all together, they're all right. And then if you say, wait a minute, I need to share some love with the lower status dogs, they're not lower status in your eyes, but they are in that hierarchy, then you put the high-ranking dog elsewhere. They do not go out to the yard later and say, hey Bob, I noticed you just got a tricycle for Christmas, a used one, but they gave me a brand new Corvette. No, that doesn't happen. They're in the moment, okay? So put one out of sight, and very often, if the high-ranking dog can get the love and affection and the lower status ones can hang back, do not reach for them and try to bring them into the circle. Put the other guy outside and then share the love with the next ranking dog. Very, very important to support the hierarchy. And by the way, thank you for the hearts. I'm glad I'm doing something helpful here. So egalitarianism, like our postmodern American world where we're trying, some of us, to treat everybody with equality and give everybody an equal shot. I personally feel strongly about that. And you can do it with your pets, but not when they're together. Okay? Now, cats are different. They do have a hierarchy, but they don't compete in the moment. They are different. You notice, by the way, that I only have one dog in my family. That's not an accident. Life is complicated. We try to keep it simple here in the Nickel household. Anyway, so.
More people and more comments.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, let's see. Diane. Okay, Cindy. Oh, Misty. I'm watching. Forgot to say hi. Hi, Misty. Thank you for coming. And Isabella. Oh, from London. Oh, my goodness. Wow. Thank you for showing up. We've had people from Mexico and Canada, but you're the first one from across the pond. So thank you. So you can handle this problem very simply in some cases. I've talked about giving food and attention to dogs in their competition, but we see cases where simply being near the person is an aggression trigger. And so as the leader, it's your responsibility, and your dogs see it like this, that you're keeping an eye on what's going on. And if you see rising tension, stiff postures, ears back, maybe somebody turning their head but keeping an eye on the other dog, and you can see the crescent moon shape of the white of the eye, what we call a whale eye, tail down, that kind of stuff. Don't just do wait and see, oh, maybe this will pass. Don't do that. Get up and leave. Oh, step number 1, always the same, completely ignore everybody, okay? Take away your attention, and your dogs go, uh-oh, screwed up here. Yeah, that's right, it's a consequence. And it's a very powerful one if you totally ignore. So fully ignoring that you've never even heard of a dog. Not only don't you have any, you don't know what it is. And when your dogs look at you, the dogs who don't exist because you're ignoring them, and they say nothing, they go, oh goodness, we've screwed this up, okay? And so you immediately ignore when you notice any hint of tension. You ignore, you stand up, and you leave the room. And then the dogs go, oh, well, they're gone now. Okay, Sally, you know any good people jokes? I mean, there is no bone of contention, you being the bone, okay? If you feel like, boy, things are escalating quickly, and they can, then you can ignore, jump up, and move at a good clip toward the back door, and then go, hey, everybody, come with me, and open the door and let everybody go outside. When they're outside, they don't have the artificial constraints of the walls of the house. Don't forget, dogs are naturally free-living creatures who have a territory in the wild with a scent boundary, not a visual boundary like a fence or the walls of a house. And so, they're kind of fish out of water living with us in some respects. They belong with us. They're domestic creatures, and they are men's and women's best friend, But some of the realities of the way we live with our windows and fences and walls and leashes sometimes causes them trouble if they don't adjust to that. So by letting them outside, now they've got a lot more space and everybody can spread out a little bit, and you've diminished the tension very quickly. But you ignore, jump up, move quickly toward the back door, and then say, okay, everybody, out of the house. And out they go. And we've disassembled the problem. Okay? What if the aggression was when a person leader was out of the room? We see that sometimes. What we're talking about, and thank you for that question, Diane, what we've really been talking about here is competition for resources. Food, which they're sure is in short supply, interaction with the leader, which they're sure is probably going to go away any minute permanently. But there are dogs who fight when they're out of the presence of their people. Food and toys, which can be a competitive trigger in some cases, not there. We see that. And those are a very, frankly, challenging problem to manage, because how do you control it? Now, there can be other reasons. I'll give you an example. And sometimes people notice in their yard that one dog has chased down and killed a rodent, a mouse or something like this, and the other dog goes over and goes, hey, I've got more stripes on my sleeve, buzz off, I'm taking that prize, and they'll fight for it. It's food-related aggression. But there are times when we have very careful observations and videos, and they simply fight. And that happens. And frankly, the outlook with those is not as good. Doesn't mean we can't help, but in an in-depth behavior consultation, the first job is to gather every possible detail that might shed light on the issue, including physical problems in other organ systems around the body that can be factors, and do our best to understand it and deal with it. There are situations where, honestly, two dogs are completely incompatible and they don't belong in the same home. Boy, I really hate those, because my job is, we hope, to make things better so that nobody breaks their bonds with anybody in the home. That's of paramount importance, but sometimes the reality is that it can't succeed that way. And very often, had people recognized they were struggling with a problem much earlier and come in much sooner, before the problem advanced to that level, we could have made a permanent difference. So, like anything else, whether we're talking about diabetes or hypertension or most any other physical problem in any species, including humans, early diagnosis and treatment makes all the difference, doesn't it? And the same is true with behavior disorders. Let's see. Is an air snap by Aphrodite a warning to the puppy? Yeah, Carla, I would say probably so. And it's natural for us, because I'm knowing you and Tom as well as I have over the years. You fell in love with that puppy right away. I mean, I'm like that too. And you don't want to see anything risky happen. And it's just a human impulse to say, now, Afro, stop that, right? You've got to steel yourself, Carla. Don't let that happen. You got you and Tom both, and you can be observant and get up. Number one, ignore. Get up, walk away, and then look at the situation later and go, what do you think the trigger was there? And avoid that stuff. But Afro, they might just be playing on the floor, and the puppy's just getting a little too raucous for the grown-up. And so one of the things that puppies essentially learn from not just other adult dogs in their group, but other puppies too, is where are the boundaries? What's the etiquette? When have I gone too far? And so my suspicion is that Afro, again knowing her, is that she may be simply doing what any adult dog naturally should do to bring out the best in that youngster over the long term, is play with that puppy, and when the puppy starts getting on a line, go, and a natural communication can be an air snap. And if the puppy is like too thick-headed, and some of them are, we'll go, okay, sorry, got too close to the line. So just be observant on that thing, but don't reprimand, not only because dogs believe they earned that response, but of course when we reprimand a dog, we don't go, no, Afro, I'd appreciate it if you'd be gentle with your younger brother here. No, we don't do it like that, do we? We go, Afro, stop that! Well, of course, dogs are our subordinates, and they follow our emotional lead. And so in that context, if the leader, you folks, have demonstrated a high emotional tension-related response, then your subordinates, your dogs, are going to go, okay, when we're together and we start getting wild and active, then we get agitated too, because that's what our leaders have done, and you don't want to go down that path. And so rather than trying to reprimand them very quietly, of course, they would see that as an earned reinforcer. So you ignore, and if you get concerned, have each of those dogs, including the puppy, drag a leash from their collar or harness, and everybody gets used to it, just when they're inside, so that when you, oh, good boy, so that when you are indoors with these pets, those leashes are on, and if you need to separate anybody, start by ignoring, grab the leash and create distance, put them elsewhere. Okay? Let's see, there's somebody else, thank you. Let me see if I can find that one. I'm no master at this darn thing yet. There we go. Okay, so there's Carla, okay. And let's see, I'm going the wrong way here. Had an adopter. I'm watching, Beck Romeo. I don't think I've met you before. I'm glad you're here. I can't believe this is really true. I never believed there is a cure to this herpes, because all the hospitals have told me, herpes? Well, we can talk about herpes. Dogs get those. We watch from across the pond too, Dr. Jeff. What are your thoughts about cats living only indoors? In some big... All right, let me see if I can read the rest of the question here. Boy, you know, I don't get enough light on this darn thing, Carolyn. Let's see here. This is a long question. Herbal cure. Shucks. Boy, I can't read that darn thing. It's not lighting. There we go. I never believe there's a cure to this herpes, because all the hospitals told me there's no cure to it. A few months ago, I saw the man emailed Dr. Abelo on the internet from a testimony shared someone who helped with herbal cure. I contacted about the process. I took my, according to my, my result came back. You know, I should probably address this by, I'll address this question on my Facebook page later. Okay. Okay. How funny are your cats? Well, they're pretty funny. They don't always get along well either, you know. I want to talk about two other things. I mentioned this a minute ago. Feeding your dogs together. Please don't ever do it. So often I see people say, well, you know, I put them in opposite corners of the kitchen and I stand guard like the hall monitor, you know, and I make sure nobody mixes it up. There's no point in that. By repeating this, your dogs don't learn that they're going to keep their fork on their own plate. No, food's about to run out. And even if they never go near the other guy's bowl, there are very subtle body language communications between dogs who are eating in the same room. And you say, okay, I've got one around the corner, they can't see each other. Well, all right, but they can still hear each other. And you don't want your dogs to experience any level of tension when they know the other one's nearby, because you can simply start building a structure for contentiousness and aggression later. Don't even want to flirt with this. My advice is that if you have more than one dog, you have a feeding time in the morning and one in the evening, or if you have a new puppy like Afro, you put that little rascal aside at least 4 times a day to eat all at once, alone, but with adult dogs twice daily, and they go to their feeding rooms. This dog goes in that feeding room, that one goes in that feeding room. However many you have, they've got their own place. If you put one outside, that's fine, but not on the other side of the glass door, because they can swap threats, even very subtle ones, through a window. So then everybody's isolated. Then you grab the bowls out of a cabinet where they're not seen, because some dogs will mix it up over anything associated with food, like a bowl, even a clean one. So you take them out from their little hiding place and you measure the food in each dog's bowl, and then you open the door to Flopsy's room and slide that bowl in, close the door, and then Mopsy, her, Cottontail, and Peter, and everybody's eating at the same time. Give everybody lots of time to finish, and then open each door individually and pull the food bowl out and close the door so that that dog is still in its room. and then you remove everybody's bowl. They're still isolated. You clean the bowls, stack them up, put them in the cabinet, and then everybody gets back out again. So that when they're together, there is never food available, ever. That is, in most dogs, that is the number one resource because we don't survive without it. And never mind you make a good income and you'll always have dog food. That's not how your dogs see it. Okay? Now here's another one. I'd like to wrap it up with this unless there's another question, which I'm happy to take. Dogs on the bed. Oh, brother, that can be a real problem. In fact, sometimes just one dog. If you don't even have a second dog in your home, and the dog's half asleep and you're half asleep and you straighten your leg and you bump your dog, some dogs can react. And the problem with the bed is that it is the leader's den. Needless to say, it's the most private place in your house, but it takes on your scent. You spend a third of your life there, like those commercials, you know, that say that every year your mattress takes on an extra pound in weight from skin flakes and dander. Well, it does. I don't know if that's a reason to buy a new mattress every 8 years, but it really does do that. And so consequently, it carries your scent with intensity. I mean, you launder your sheets and your clothing, but you don't launder your mattress. Well, that's a high value location for dogs. And there are dogs who respect the privilege, and I'm not going to argue with that. But if you have a dog or more than one dog, and they all feel pretty darn important when they're in the leader's den, which, by the way, in nature, they never really are except for one purpose, and that's if they're invited there by the leader for purposes that aren't going to occur in your home, which is for breeding, right? So the dog's on your bed and he goes, what the heck am I doing in my leader's den? And so that not only can be kind of a high privilege, but also can be a cause of anxiety in that context. And so you don't want that. You don't want dogs to be agitated or nervous, and then there's the other dog, and who has this high privilege? Just don't let that happen. Huge mistake, potentially. Now, one last point, and I know there's another question just came in. If your dogs are aggressive with each other, and you say, we've tried to solve this problem, you can't bring them into a, credentialed behaviorist, and you want to prevent injuries, well, a basket muzzle? Absolutely. This is called a Baskerville basket muzzle. You can see it's got a little spot to put treats, so you can train dogs with it. By far the best quality, lightweight rubber, very strong, and they come in a variety of shapes and sizes for different size skulls on dogs, different shapes, and they're wonderful. It's a great product. Baskerville, like Hound of the Baskerville. Okay, you can go to their website, and dogs take to them pretty quickly, and they will prevent injury. Dogs can do everything but eat and bite while wearing it. They can learn to drink. They can bark and pant. Pretty good product. Well, it will prevent injury, but it will not prevent the problem from worsening. It will not prevent your dogs from swapping threatening body signals and fear and feeling fear and being intimidated. Reduced welfare. Feelings matter, don't they? And even dogs who don't fight or don't hurt each other, we sometimes hear that people had a couple of dogs, they thought everything was okay, and the one dog got old and passed on, and they find that the younger one, in some cases, just develops a new life and becomes a lot more confident and playful and becomes joyful. And they go, oh my goodness, we had no idea that this dog was really dominated and intimidated by the other dog. Well, that happens all the time. So, basket muzzles can prevent injury, but they don't prevent damage to the neural circuits, the brain, the emotions, the well-being. So I'm certainly in favor of preventing injury, but don't ever believe that that solves a behavior problem because it can't. All right? Let me see. There was one more question, I think. How about instead of creating a positive association by feeding them together, separation is not really solving the problem. You are totally right, Isabella. It does not solve the problem. And we do sometimes, in fact, I was hoping for this question, because in some situations, you can teach dogs to behave better with each other. One of the tools that we use for that, and I didn't bring one with me here today, is a gentle leader head halter. And the beauty of that device is that the leash attaches to a ring beneath the collar. It looks a lot like a halter that a horse would wear. But there are other brands of head halter, and they can all do something that nothing else can do. When you pull on the leash, you steer the dog's head away from or toward whatever you want. You control where the dog's attention is. Not all the time, but just when you're using it. And so when you have dogs who are together, you can use the head halter on the lower status dog. Maybe they're competing for high rank. That can happen. And you can teach the lower status dog to look away from the higher status dog. And especially if you have two people, then the high status dog can have its attention directed away from its subordinate, but towards its leader where it earns a treat. And you're totally correct, Isabella. Dogs can learn to respect the situation, to look to the leader when that tension might otherwise be building, and earn reinforcers for appropriate behavior. You're totally correct that simply avoiding and separating the dogs doesn't teach them what to do instead of competing. Absolutely right. And that's taking this whole thing to a new level. And this can be done in many dogs, but there are some of them that, by the time they end up in my consulting room, they are so far advanced that they sort of are agitated just seeing each other. And when we've got a problem that severe, that kind of behavior modification may not be realistic. And so, to your point, when people recognize this early and they're willing to spend a lot of time and energy on this thing and be very consistent under good direction, they certainly can do that. And I'm a very big believer on it, and I've taught people to do it, and I've seen some very good successes. Now, a gentle leader is teaching a dog to accept that is a job in itself. There are only a few dogs where you can simply put it on the dog's face and the dog goes, well, all right. The truth is that you should never put it on the dog. A dog should always be allowed to choose to put its face in it, and it gets immediately rewarded with a little snack. And we teach very slowly. Usually it takes between 3 weeks and 3 months for a dog to learn that, you know what, this thing is always associated with earning good things from my leader, going on leash walks, learning to work for the leader, whether the other dog is present. And so we want the dog to choose that because it associates excellent things with it. And that takes time. So it needs to be the right pet parent who says, you bet I'm going to do that because I'm really interested in bringing out the best in my dog. And that's really an act of kindness. It's actually a series of acts of kindness toward the dog because the dog's well-being benefits tremendously. And that kind of kindness toward a pet or towards another person, including the people in your home. The old saying, charity begins at home, because when we can start treating those who are closest to us, including our pets, with kindness, then we immediately get back a reward because it brings out their best. And we're not triggering a reaction. We're triggering, oh, well, all right. It looks like I've just been accepted. It looks like a problem has been averted. It looks like I'm actually kind of special. And dogs regard that with the same kind of positive response that a person would. So kindness matters. And it's very easy for people to make the mistake, and it's completely understandable. And there's no value in being judgmental toward a person who has reacted in the heat of the moment by swatting at their dog or yelling at their dog or using a choke collar or an electric shock collar so that they sort of set their dogs up for the problem of aggression and then give them an immediate aversive punishment. That is, even if it worked, there's nothing about it that teaches the dog what to do instead of being agitated and fearful or aggressive or competitive with the other dog. We really do have to get to the cause, and Isabella, that's the essence of your question, is can we deal with the cause of this and teach the dogs a response substitution? Instead of reacting aggressively, I'm going to do this instead. And the answer is yes, we can. And so, yeah, you're welcome, Misty. Thank you for saying so. Useful tip, we have those in Europe as well, and we find this kind of approach better long-term, of course. You're right. it's a long horizon. And you know, in my behavior practice, we're treating the disorder in the cat or the dog, but what are the person's capabilities? What are their challenges? What are their limitations, time-wise and the rest of it? And so we have to bring out their best too and make the whole system work, because I often joke to my clients, I could help you more if I moved in to your house and lived there, but it ain't going to happen. So we work that out. So anyway, I really am glad everybody shared some time with me on this. This is a very important subject, largely because it's so common. So many pets get hurt. So many people get hurt reaching in the heat of the moment. And they forgot to leave a leash on the dog, a drag line that the dog drags around so you can safely grab it and separate them. But anyway, you know, thank you. And you can go to my Facebook page, watch this again later, put your friend's name in the comment line. They can watch it later. And you can also subscribe to my website, by the way, drjeffnickel.com, drjeff, Nichol.com. And every week on Tuesday morning, in your email box, you will get my Facebook Live from the week before, in case you missed it, and my weekly media blog, which of course is my question answer column in the Albuquerque Journal, where I got this little story about Helmut and who was it, Rose, I think, Rosebud. That's in there every week too. And so sign up at no charge to subscribe, and I will send you free my at-home pet first aid and CPR guide. So thank you again, everybody. Have a great week, and I'll see you next Thursday, 6 o'clock Mountain. That'll be 8 o'clock Eastern.